to a global fintech podcast with Matt and Premal. We thought we would take an episode and do a real retrospective on basically the reason Premal and I met each other was through founding Kiva.org together in 2005. We got a bunch of the crew that helped us start Kiva, originally all volunteers, together to reminisce about the various pathways we took towards founding this world-changing organization together. And I might say that a lot of heroes and a lot of really, really special people that were part of the story couldn't make it today. But there were so many people other than us and other than the people on this podcast that helped make Kiva the world-changing organization it is today.
This is a really special episode for Matt and me today. We have the early crew, a group of volunteers that helped co-create Kiva and get it off the ground over 15 years ago now. And we wanted to just have folks share their stories and reminisce a bit, and also thank so many of the early Kiva lenders and partners and volunteers who were there, who believed in this very hopeful corner on the internet. So thank you for making it a reality. If you were there way back then, Matt and I are profoundly grateful to be connected to you in this way. And for those of you who are curious about how Kiva got started and some of the stories from the early days, we hope you enjoy this episode.
I was gonna ask people to share three things, if you want to, was the story of how you joined Kiva, your favorite story at Kiva, and also like what Kiva means to you looking back at it this many years later. So that's it. So I'm gonna just go by the order of my screen. Carl, do you want to share yours?
So how did I first join Kiva? So Matt and I worked at TiVo long time ago. It's what, 2005 or so. And at that time, Matt, you were working on the first version of Kiva, nights and weekends. And I remember you coming in, showing me the versions, kind of explaining your vision for it. And I remember really liking the idea. I remember making an early loan on the platform, and I actually looked it up today and was to Agnes in Uganda to buy goods for her store. And that was, I looked at it, it was March of 2005 when we made that loan. And so fast forward a couple of months, I was bored at TiVo. You were asking for some help with the site. We ended up spending a bunch of time in my little cramped apartment in Mountain View. Jeremy, you came in, we were all sitting there hacking, trying to get everything working. Those were good times. Ended up being able to travel and live over in Uganda for a while. Met with some of the entrepreneurs, met with some of the partners, tried the best I could to do some hacking over there, mostly failing over satellite link. And so, but otherwise that was really the story. Was able to host a couple of the first Kiva, I don't know if you were calling them Kiva fellows then, but some of the interns who came over to help out. So that was fun to be able to do that. And then one of my favorite stories from that time was that I remember the PBS guys coming over and being able to travel around with them and kind of watching how they made their they did a segment on I actually forget which PBS show. Frontline
PBS. We know that well. That really changed our lives.
Yeah, so that was and I remember we traveled around to a couple of different cities in Uganda, and the show came out really well. But I remember behind the scenes, the hundreds of little kids running after them, trying to look through the camera, and the chaos going on, and then none of that really showing up in in the documentary, which was fun. And then in terms of what Kiva means to me, Kiva always meant connections. Like I enjoyed doing the loans because I really felt connections with who I was. I felt connections with kind of the places I was able to loan to. And to me, I think that was kind of the joy of being part of Kiva, is seeing people make those connections and being able to really learn the stories of where their money was going and what was happening to it.
Thanks, Carl. I'm going to try to go in roughly chronological order. I think, Jeremy, that might be a good segue to you, and then Fiona.
Boy, man. How did I get involved? Fiona and I were staying at my parents' house in Connecticut. We read about Kiva. I think it was a CNN article or something. It was like a blog post. I don't even remember.
It was a CNN article where there was a tidal wave of money.
Yeah.
To me.
Yeah. And we had just come from Southeast Asia. Fiona and I had raised some money after the tsunami for people who'd been affected by that. And I remember we read about Kiva. I sent like an email or something, which obviously went nowhere. But I wound up, I did a whois on the kiva.org domain name. And Matt was inexperienced and unprofessional enough to actually put his real phone number in there.
Yeah, that's good.
So I called him.
Your flip phone. Picked up my flip phone.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I called him and we got to talking, but he put me in touch with their parent organization, which was a nonprofit called Village Enterprise.
Oh, Kiva wasn't even a company back then.
It wasn't even a thing. It wasn't even a thing. But we wound up in San Francisco. We wound up kind of crashing in Carl's apartment. We were like staying at Premal's house for, what was that, like 2 years? Like it was forever. Like we stayed at Premal's house for ages. And we didn't get paid for a long time. And
nope, you did not. You did not.
I'm still waiting for those steps. I'm looking forward to getting
the back pay, right?
That's right. And I think that brings me to kind of my favorite story. I got a lot of favorite stories about Kiva, you guys, like so many. But I feel like the story that I should talk about is Carl alluded to us being on PBS, and Matt said it was a game changer for us. The story that I've told and that has gotten me a lot of jobs is when we were on.
Hey, you got paid for it. Good.
I got paid, man.
Because of Kiva.
When we were on Frontline, I remember being in that San Francisco office, that old Sweat Lodge office, and it was Halloween, and the Frontline episode was going to air. Rupert, you were there. Premal was laughing. Premal was in this penguin costume. It was ridiculous. I was actually looking for pictures and I couldn't find them. Premal was in this penguin costume, and we were all super excited because this is like our big shot. We were going to be on TV, and we had all these graphs and stuff projected on the wall, and we were psyched. And I remember the Frontline episode was going to air at 6:30 p.m. Pacific time, because that's 9:30 p.m. Eastern time. At like 6:30, they were like, "Okay, welcome. This is Frontline PBS. We got a great show for you today. We're going to introduce you to Kiva." As soon as they said the word, our site was down as down could be. Like,
that's because we could only support like 5 concurrent users. So like 5 people went to Kiva.
5 concurrent users, and like the server's like sweating bullets. So yeah, it totally went down. We were down for Sam. Let's not be judgmental. Just because it was 8,000 database hits per page load, we're all learning. The site went down, and it was down for like 3 days. But I remember kind of after, I don't know if it was that first night or the second night, but we put up a page that said, "Welcome Frontline viewers. You melted our servers. If you want to donate to help us get new servers, here's it." We just threw a PayPal link in there. I didn't have the foresight to make it go to my personal account, but lessons learned. And you know, we were joking earlier about us not getting paid. That actually, if I remember correctly, Matt, you might have a different memory, but that we raised like a ton of money. I don't remember how much.
That was lucky mistake, they say. That was not intentional. That was not, we made like 200 grand in a weekend. All of a sudden we could pay you, and you rented an apartment.
Yeah,
you were living with ex Stanford basketball players.
We had all been working for 10 months. We were finally able to get paid. That was Halloween. By Thanksgiving, we hit our first million in loans raised. By Christmas, we hit our second million. It was off to the races. And I don't know. I tell that story because it's just I think it's a great Kiva sort of origin story for me, in like being able to roll with the punches, and like it doesn't go your way, so you figure out something to do, and like do it fast. I feel like that was the Kiva lifestyle for the 5 years that I was there. I mean, I don't know what it was like after I left, but I feel like it was constant.
Yeah, the playbook to start like a new website that's database backed wasn't widely known. I don't know, it probably could have done better, but we didn't even use like a version control.
We used a version? I did.
Not then. Not at that weekend. We had like files. We had folders. I would just email you a folder of the code, and you would like deploy it on Rackspace or whatever. Not even Rackspace. It was like one. Yeah, it was DreamHost. Yes, it was like I don't know. So $9.99 a month service.
Yeah. So I feel like that was a long and rambling answer. I apologize for taking so much time. What does Kiva mean to me? My whole life would be different if it wasn't for Kiva. I really don't even, like, it sounds superlative, but it's really true. Like,
yeah, that's true for it's true for many of us. True for many of us in this call, actually. Fiona, why don't you go next?
Yeah. Well, I think Jeremy covered how I came to work for Kiva. Have the same story. So I'll jump into some favorite Kiva stories. I have a couple. I love remembering when we went to a microfinance conference in LA very, very early on. And I have this memory, like we were sneaking into the conference. We didn't all have passes. So we tried to figure out how we could all get in. And Muhammad Yunus was there, Dr. Muhammad Yunus, and Matt and Premal cornered him somehow at the conference and like basically put a laptop in front of his face.
We brought him to the computer lab. We got him to go to the library computer lab at a conference.
Is that
to look at it? Yeah.
Is that how it was? And they're explaining to him, it's just like, it's such an amazing, because I'm imagining what was going through his mind at that time, which I'm sure was, what on earth is this? That's one. I also have a memory of being in Premal's house and listening to a call. I think Chelsea was on the call too, when Premal was explaining, and I've actually told this story a lot of times, explaining to an MFI in Cambodia, just trying to explain what we were trying to do. And if my memory is right, I'm not sure if it is, but I feel like there are parts of the conversation where there were just these things that for us were so, I think that there was like one part where you were having to explain, like, who would be these people that would just give $25 and people would just be on the internet, and like, what do you mean people are just on the internet all day? And it was just so kind of, it's just one of those memories in my mind of like those real landmark moments where you have an inkling into, we're so in our bubble and we're so trying to we have this idea in our head, and then you have those moments where you're trying to explain it to somebody else and you're just realizing that bridge is longer than you thought it was, or maybe that it is when we kind of talk to each other. I also have a great memory of picking up the phone. It was Nicholas Kristoff, and I didn't know who he was, and I was like Googling him. I was like, oh, true story. And he was like, I'm Nick Kristoff. I work at the New York Times. I'm going to Afghanistan and I want to find this baker. Like literally that was the conversation. And I'm like, cool. Okay. Let's see how we're going to do this. And I think that kind of really demonstrates like just some of that beauty of the early days where it was just so pure, like cornering Muhammad Yunus at a conference, or Maria Shriver just walks into the office one day and we're all like, oh, hey, what's up, Maria? There were such pure moments, and that kind of leads me to what Kiva means to me. For me, there's a very unique kind of idea or feeling that I had with Kiva, and then I've had at different times, or come across at different times. And it's just, sometimes there's an idea that just needs to exist. You know, like has been said by other people, like this is the Kiva family, and it's attracted, you know, that there's a unique group of people that come together that are just so drawn by making something exist that it just needs to exist in the world. And when you do find those things, like those are the really special projects, whatever it is, whatever space it is, you know, it doesn't even have to be like a social justice thing, but sometimes there are those things that just, you know, we just need to make sure that before we move on, this thing lives on beyond us.
That's beautiful. And the process of being part of that is really bonding for all of us, and also life-changing. So it's really humbling to be part of something like that, where you feel like you're making something that just needs to exist, and you're just a conduit to make it exist. Allie and Johnny, you're in Nashville. You're going out to dinner, so you should.
So I'll talk really quickly. I came to Kiva straight out of school, actually. I had become really interested in microfinance. I had read Banker to the Poor. I think it was around the time that Muhammad Yunus had won the Nobel Peace Prize, and Kiva was like hot. So I applied. Gerard hired me to contact us at kiva.org. And so I was working in customer service, and it was like a really magical kind of first job, I think, for a lot of reasons. But I think Kiva was so magnetic, and just brought together like such kind of passionate and smart people. So I feel really lucky to have had that be like my first work experience. Kiva like really feels like home to me in a lot of ways. I think like there's such a deep connection to the people that I worked with there. And then obviously like I met my husband. We have a family that is thanks to Gerard and Matt and Premal and like Fiona's call. Ben Elberger, I have you to thank, because I had a friend who was a fellow and was part of Ben's portfolio, and I think he wrote an email when I was applying. So yeah, I mean, I just feel like it does really feel like home and like family in so many ways, which is so special. Over to you.
Yeah, I came to Kiva as a volunteer on a sabbatical from Oliver Wyman, Premal's former employer, and did a volunteering stint for 5 months and met everyone. And then when you guys were starting Kiva Zip, somehow you managed to hire me back. And then Kiva means to me, I mean, I have a wife and 3 kids thanks to Kiva. So that's the most important thing.
They were all the Kiva friends. Ben, how did you get roped into this stuff?
So I think it was you and Jess were presenting on the Stanford campus, and I was still an undergrad. It was my last year. And I was like, okay, this will be fun. I'll get involved in it. Similar to Jeremy and the payment thing, I remember about to graduate from school. Premal goes, you should join Kiva. And I said, oh, I didn't think we had money to pay people. He goes, we don't. You go work at Starbucks 40 hours a week. You go work for us 40 hours a week. You'll be fine. It'll be great. Like, it'll be awesome. And I'm like, I don't know that my parents will be super cool with me graduating Stanford and
first
then
job
Starbucks, like with yours. And he goes, okay, fine. Go get another job and then work for us 40 hours a week. So it was an amazing early few days. In the early days of Kiva, I do remember, Fiona might remember this as well. There was no automatic way to push a loan to the website.
Right.
So there was the button, and somebody 24 hours had to be on staff to push the button of loan.
Yeah, you had to do it. You had to activate it like 5 an hour every
exactly.
hour. Someone had to press it because I didn't want there to be too many. Remember, I didn't want there to be too many.
Yeah.
I had this philosophy that it has to be a short list. Yeah.
it was like somebody would get on a plane and then the other people had to be ready to activate while they were on the plane and overnight.
And we didn't have Slack. We didn't have Slack. We didn't have cell phones. So it was like just emailing around. Okay, press the button. That was the only way to.
It was awesome. That was really fun.
Okay, so we're walking through history then here. I'm just trying to think. How do we get you roped in, Rupa? We actually had money at some point. We hired you.
I think I was kind of like fourth or fifth in line when I moved away, because I think we realized that there might be some benefit to having someone in Philadelphia. So I was hired at that point. But in between, I was there for the memories that we all shared. It was the Frontline PBS, broke the internet moment, and the penguin costume, which was insane. And, almost seeing both Matt and Premal not knowing what to do because they were so excited, but it was a bittersweet moment of growth, but also just not really knowing what to do with it. And to add to Jeremy's story on that page of donation, I don't know if you guys remember, there was that photograph at the bottom, and there was a few of us working at a desk, just to show it was, I don't know if it was like a,
yes. No, it was like here are the people working hard, pay their salaries, and it was like us in an office, like 4 of us just working, and it's like donate to these people.
And these are all things that I just remember. That was the time in my life where it was all or nothing. You hustle, you make it happen. It didn't matter if we were paid. It didn't matter if we didn't sleep. It didn't matter. I can still wear it. Like, I actually brought my
That's so awesome. We should have all worn our Kiva swag.
Quote on the back, and I remember wearing the same clothes over and over again, going into the office, and it was awesome. So those are my amazing memories, and I think you guys will always be family. So that's always going to be my heart.
That's so good. That is so touching. Sam, you got involved around this time.
So I feel like that Christmas 2006, I remember trying to email you and see if you needed some help. When I showed up in April, I think I showed up like 2 weeks after Zvi did. Remember being in I think what you call the sweat lodge, Jeremy. Exactly. All of us in that same spot. Maybe the memory, as nice as the sweat lodge was, the space that I can have the fondest memories for is the office on 18th Street. And the one that sticks out in my head was the day that we were on Oprah. For whatever reason, you crowded into like the smallest conference room in that space, because that's the one that had the biggest TV. And we were sitting there all watching the broadcast go live. And I was in the corner, kind of like watching the meter on the server go, and kind of right when it kind of was starting to go explode, like threw up the splash page and put that solicit donations page back up there. And I think we repeated this, 4 times, one for each time zone throughout the day. Wasn't quite as exciting as the first time around, but managed to get everything funded and collect a bunch of donations along the way. But that's sort of like do it live. There's nothing quite like having a connection between keystrokes you do and something happened on live TV to really just make you feel like you're living on the edge. In terms of what Kiva means to me after the fact, I'm going to blend a couple things together. I think that maybe Fiona was the one who said this, that like that magic, when you get the right idea, right people together, and just thinking back to how much, we were almost carried by the lenders in those early days, no matter how much we misstepped or did something wrong, they kept, propelling us down the right direction. And that led it to the rest of you as well, because like you said, it is a family that you will never quite forget.
Yeah, so I think joined the same time Sam did, and I literally tried to call, nobody answered the email either. I showed up in the office, and there's Chelsea, the first office with 1 room, and I think she put me into touch with Premal, who said exactly the same thing that Ben said. Yeah, you should totally work for us. Sponsor your visa. So you have to get another job that will sponsor your visa, and you should work.
Let's get another job.
And then I said, well,
come work with us. We get another job.
I work at consulting firm. Oh, they usually have programs where you can volunteer, right? So maybe you do that. And so, like, actually, to his credit, they did. Ernst & Young had the program. So, and he said, can you automate your work? I was like, Yeah, I think I could. So I actually started like coding my work so that I could like automate some of the manual stuff that like people did at Ernst & Young. So I was able to work like 3-4 days a week and achieve 2 days at Ernst & Young. And that's how I got started. And then there was like, I think that.
And they knew you were doing this?
Yeah, they did. Because I told my boss like, hell, because they wanted like somebody to kind of like be profiled as like a Ernst & Young good citizen, like good Samaritan. So yeah. I think my favorite story was actually, I think we had a lot of parties there, like the Maroon 5 band and the Adrian Grenier like time at his house. And that was like a long time back. But we were on the front line. I think the thing that I noticed was we ran out of borrowers, right? And so coming from Indonesia, I'd watched this movie called Motorcycle Diaries. And I thought, that sounds like a cool thing to do. So I told Premal, hey, I can like try to find microfinance banks in Southeast Asia.
On your motorcycle?
Yeah, on a motorcycle. Yeah. So he said, yeah, well, at the time we finally had some money. So he gave me like a stipend and it was enough for me to buy an old motorcycle and a tent. And I went driving around like Cambodia, Vietnam, Indonesia, like literally going village to village. So one of the stories was in Vietnam. I was going to villages. I bring money from America. And so I came to this village and who needs money? And I came to this microfinance bank and I said, well, how do you get the money? I said, well, I showed up, I had a preloaded version of the Kiva website with like pictures of borrowers from Africa. So there's no Southeast Asians at the time. And then I said, okay, you put your pictures of your borrowers here and then, we'll send you money. And then the first thing they did was they actually lifted my laptop and like shook it, like, where's the money? Nobody knew, like they didn't know money transfers, they didn't know anything. So it was bizarre. So that was my life for like 18 months with Kiva. And I remember the manual upload because I would be the one calling at like 2 a.m. like as a partner, like, hey, can somebody upload this picture of a borrower? Because like because they wouldn't believe it unless it was on the website. They thought I would be like a scammer.
Yeah, they thought you were a scammer. So you have to get it up right away.
Yep. So anyways, yeah, so that's it. And what Kiva means to me is that I think for me, it was actually about the culture. I really love that early kind of moment of just bringing something to existence because it was good for the world. And I've really tried to replicate that in like the 2 companies that I founded afterwards with Ben. Right. I think that was it. And I think that was really important. And then that was the basis for a lot of the success that, some of these companies have had.
That's great. Yeah, the Kiva Mafia is strong. Anyone want to go next? I think we have a few of you. Who wants to go next?
I'm happy to go next.
Cool, thanks.
I think there's an echo though. Can you guys hear me okay? Okay, good. So I think I want to start with, I had just gotten out of a relationship. So I was looking for an apartment and I found an apartment and the guy who was not living there for the moment for subletting was in Uganda. We started emailing. And what I found out was that his name was Bill Brick and he was in Uganda as a Kiva fellow. And that was how I found out about the fellowship. And I had already been creating this list after getting out of the relationship. I'd been creating this list of all these new things I wanted to do. And one of them was looking for opportunities to work or volunteer in Africa. And so it was just sort of this like beautiful situation that came together. And JD, had interviewed me. He was shocked when I said my first choice is Liberia. He said, wow, why did he say that? Ben was my guide, my, whatever you were called at the time. I call you my guide. I remember Ben handing me at training like 10 laptops. Like, can you take these to LEAP, the local enterprise assistance program? Guys,
smuggling.
Leap ended up being very challenging, as we all remember. Like, I feel like that's the thing about Kiva, the heart and soul of Kiva is so many good people doing good things. My life was absolutely transformed and changed by Kiva. I love still keeping in touch with so many people. Really it is like family.
Okay, so I guess I first got involved with Kiva because I was on a conference panel with Matt back in like 2007. There's so many stories. One is like, one Kiva partner had found themselves in the middle of like a border dispute between Armenia and Azerbaijan. And I was like texting back and forth or emailing back and forth with Alexis Ohanian, who was the Kiva fellow, how to get out of that situation. Still disputed, I think. The thing that when I think back, you might remember it was one of the Skoll trips. We were in London and Matt got the idea like, hey, let's throw a party, and then it was like send out an email or some sort of post on the site about like, come meet Kiva founders at so and so bar in like Kensington or something. And I remember, first of all, it was a great time. Like, probably like we had a whole like section of the bar cordoned off. Maybe 100 people showed up, 50 to 100, something like that. And I remember talking to this guy who's like shutting the place down, like at the very, like there till the bitter end. And this guy had never heard of Kiva until that day. He actually discovered the site randomly, visited the homepage, was like, first time conversion, made a loan, and then somewhere in the checkout process saw this invitation and was like, okay, I'll go down and check it out. And then he and his girlfriend like stayed the whole time until the very end of the night. And I asked him, I was like, who does that? Who just like hangs out with a website, like, that they just met on the first date, so to speak. And the thing that he said that really struck me, he's like, every person that I met here, I felt like I had a connection to and like shared the same values. And he said it was like unlike any other like random group of people that he could remember running into. And I feel like that was, when I think about Kiva, that's really what it is. And I think those early lenders especially were very much like that. We're like kind of very different in a lot of ways, but like in this particular value of like human dignity. And there was a chord struck by Kiva. And I think that that magnetism is even stronger, among the people that were so motivated to even come and work there. It's part of why this group is so amazing. But that's really what I think of, is that magic. And when I also sort of, when I zoom out now, like 10 years later, and I think about how that was really, we were still in the honeymoon of like techno-utopianism. And like, the shine has kind of come off technology in a lot of ways in terms of, all of these unintended consequences and the downsides of like growth hacking, evolutionary biology, right? And I kind of think at that time that we were throwing that party, we didn't know yet how many of these early adopters there were. It might be everybody, right? Like, and that moment in time was such a moment of like optimism that, yeah, maybe we all are much more alike than we think. And maybe there's many more of us that do share the same values than we think. And it's just a beautiful moment that I think when they sort of tell the tale of like technology in the first part of the 21st century, I think Kiva is a shining example of like the best possible potential for technology at that time. And that's really what sticks with me.
Yeah, thanks so much for saying that, Bennett. That brought back a lot of feelings and like made me realize where we were at that time and sort of step into my body at that time, what I was going through. I feel like that era was a big optimistic time in my life. I think I came into Kiva kind of negative about my own future and really, really worried about having some sense of meaningful work or just growing old working in a generic corporation. But the early first few years sort of broke that and turned me kind of into a person that by nature trusts other people, by nature is sort of optimistic about people, thinks the world is a good place. And I don't know if I felt that way before. I think that was a big part of it for me. Gerard, how did we get you roped in?
Well,
love your background, by the way.
Thank you. That's my favorite. Yeah, it's something I saw on MTV.com and I pulled it off. It's from the 90s. No, yeah, how did I get roped in? So I was in DC in 2007. I was moving to San Francisco. And I remember one of my coworkers at a nonprofit that I was working for there told me about this thing, Kiva. and like really interesting story about microfinance. Muhammad Yunus, I think, had just won the Nobel Prize at that point. So I was like, oh, maybe I should apply to work there. So I looked it up. There was a customer service job open, so I applied to that. And somehow, miraculously, I got it, despite having no appreciable skills. I was a history major. So I was like, I don't know anything about tech startups or San Francisco or anything. Lived in the East Coast my whole life, so I just showed up. My first day, I helped move furniture. That was fun. I wore a suit jacket to work, and everyone looked at me like I was a huge. Fiona was like, "You're very impressive," because I wore a suit jacket. I was like, "What is this?"
West Coast, my friend.
West Coast. So yeah, that's how I got roped in. I thought it was a cool thing, and I wanted to be a part of it. I, felt like nonprofits were an important thing to do, and it was certainly the most interesting thing, and certainly the most like cutting edge thing that was happening. So it was a great thing to be a part of. I remember showing up, and like one of the first things we had to deal with was this cockfighting loan that got posted in Peru. It was for like a cockfighting bird, and Matt was like, "What do we do about this?" And I was like, "I don't know what we should do. I don't know. I just got here." And that was one of the great things about Kiva, where it was just like, "What do you want to do?" I'm like, "I don't know. Let's figure it out." And we just figured it out. We're like, "What does the UN Convention on Cockfighting say?" And we, figured out that there was some we like created a rule and then had to just vet it through Kiva friends who were like almost like the board of directors, because they represented our lenders, which is where all of our money came from, right? Not money to fund the organization necessarily, but to like fund the lenders. Then you realize that there's this other stuff that's happening. Like Kiva is just an unassailable good. It's like a public good. It, like other people have said, it kind of has to exist. And I'm really glad that it does. And I know it's changed a lot since I was last there, which is like 5 years ago now. But I'm glad that we did all that work. It's like a really interesting thing in that like so many people landed in San Francisco at that time and like became millionaires and billionaires. They just like got so rich, and that didn't happen to me. But I think like I got something else, which was like a totally life-changing experience. And I think it really shaped the way that I think about people and how like what technology does and what's possible. So yeah, that's what Kiva means to me.
These stories are touching. I really like listening to you. Justin, what does Kiva mean to you today?
It's basically my first job, more or less, like my first real job that I consider. And it was just like you and Premal and Johnny being like my basically like North Star on a compass is like, be like these guys. And then having a bunch of guys like Gerard and Ryan and like all of the other people at Kiva that were just generally like pretty chill. It was like, all right, this is what this is the type of person I want to be. This is a good like ethos of like influences around me and at this time in my life. I don't know if I was that conscious of it then. I think I was pretty conscious of it, but like it's definitely like very true now.
It's for a lot of people probably a very weird first career experience because it kind of spoils you for the rest of other jobs.
I want to say one thing. Jeremy just showed CLO the Kiva profile.
That's right. When I still worked at Kiva, we had CLO. I created a Kiva profile for him and made a bunch of loans. No kidding. Like
wow.
I showed CLO for the first time. I showed Kiva to CLO for the first time, and I was like, "Here's your profile. It's been making loans the whole time."
It's just on auto loan. Did it retain principal?
Yeah, we only lost like one loan. Guys, it's working.
Sound all right? I'll have you know, Michelle, there's a melodica on the actual recorded version, thanks to you.
Yes.
Tell in the rear view now what he really could have, should have. Tinnitus and a tender heart make it tough even if you got it in you. Johnny Matt Shaw Ryan was his given and his username. Chassis rides high on his Silverado. Full of promise was a brown-eyed boy, full of vim, full of vigor. Foot his trusty stranger form, hope she isn't getting bigger. Got a taste for Bitcoin, TikTok, whiskey, and conspiracies. Holds his head high when he's feeling lonely. No one knows where he disappears. Someone saw him rolling papers in Nashville. Would he be there still? I asked him once if I could write his song. He said he'd play along, along, and the chorus lines were his. He sang it loud, he said, ice, ice, Johnny. Whoops, Johnny, 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 whoops, Johnny. Brown-eyed Johnny. Johnny said, stay cool. He had his problems, but his faults were only one. Johnny got his fun. Not everything in this song is about Johnny except this line. What a wizard with a PowerPoint. He could really give a meeting. If he only ever had a point, work was always ever fleeting. Had himself a circus phase with great escapes and fire point. Throw the flames high, cue the water chamber. Did a spell in the Peace Corps, hanging solar lamps where it rains all day. Someone asked, what is that for? And will it scare the stars away? Love end up a Fisher just because they both were Capricorns. Raised their glass to friends from distant waters. No one knows where he disappeared. Someone saw him giving nature tours near Cancun. Could be there soon. Betty's holding court by moonlight singing. Ice, ice, Johnny. Whoops, Johnny, Johnny, Johnny. Whoops, Johnny. Brown-eyed Johnny. Johnny says stay cool. He had his demons, but his faults were only one. Johnny got his fun. One more verse, because there's a lot of names to get in. Little Chelsea Price was a prize, but he knew he couldn't keep it. Liked his dog and the dog liked her, didn't feel that he deserved it. Allie Lisa Karen stole his heart and mama's jewelry. Makes the blood rise just to speak about it. Took a job as a crab boat hand, Bering Seas of Alaska. Lady Karen ought to miss him now. I don't know, but I'll ask her. Overboard in an angry sea, give it up to the cold and bitter void. Lazy holds his breath while blues are gently breaching. Last time I saw him here, before he headed north, spilling whiskey, telling tales of Eskimo girls. His chin was high, his smile right. Go ahead, he said, long as the chorus lines are mine. He slapped his knee and sang, ice, ice, Johnny. Whoops, Johnny, 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 whoops, Johnny. Brown-eyed Johnny. Johnny said, stay cool. He had his issues, but his faults were only one. Johnny got his fun. We raised a glass and sang, ice, ice, Johnny. Whoops, Johnny, 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 whoops, Johnny. Brown-eyed Johnny. Johnny said, stay cool. He had his problems. County God is fun. There you go.
Come in.